Well, I'd like to start with the property tax discussion.
Okay.
How do you plan to approach property taxes this session? You rolled out your plan this week. The House Republicans have theirs. The Senate Republicans have theirs. Do you feel like you've got the best ideas and we need to do it that way, or will you take the best bits of each?
Yeah, well, that's what I've always done, and that's why we've been so successful with tax reductions that we've been able to implement over my tenure. So I think the good news is for property taxpayers is it's obvious that the House, the Senate, and the governor's office truly believe that we need to do something to address high property taxes. And so I've already met with several legislators in both chambers, just walking them through my bill. I talked to Dawson to let him know that I would be doing that. We let Carter know in the House that we were doing that. And so what I typically did when we were working on tax reform is I would put the bills side by side. We start to see where there's some similarities. We put that over in this column. These are the things we agree on. Here's where we have some different views. And then just start working through it to see where we can find consensus and eventually get the bill to the floor and hopefully to my desk. But I really do, I've said this over and over, it is the expectation, I believe, of Iowans that we do something to address high property taxes. And so there is a commitment there to do that, and the fact that we have 3 bills this early in the session, I think, is a really good sign.
You have proposed as part of your bill a 2% revenue growth cap for local governments. I think you probably know, and maybe heard during your roundtables, that that's probably not going to be super popular with them. Why did you come to that number?
Well, first of all, it's reasonable. We're already starting at an inflated number. So if you go online to the website that I talked about in my condition of the state, you can take a look at different cities and counties, and what you'll see a lot of times, not always, is the property taxes go like this, then we have inflation, then we have assessed values, sometimes above inflation, sometimes right below inflation, and then a lot of times we have population decline. So we are already started from an inflated number. I didn't say 0, I didn't go negative. I allowed them to take that inflated number, add 2% on top of that annually, and we allowed them to cap to include new construction. So, I think that was an important piece as well. I've been, this started back when I was lieutenant governor, and for the most part, as I've been governor, my agencies have operated in the status quo budget over all of those years. And so we had to make decisions. We had to prioritize what was important, and then we had to fund it. But we just have to do things differently. Iowans have to be a part of the solution. They have to be willing to maybe look at how we deliver services differently, and I think there are a lot of opportunities to do that, and I think there are a ton of great examples out there of what communities are doing.
Do you think, you mentioned taking the best from each plan, do you think the final number will be 2%? Or, because inflation also has been above 2% for several years.
But
too.
That applies to everything.
Sure.
That applies to everything we do. Ask families, do they get guaranteed income increase? Ask seniors who are living on a fixed income, who have watched their property taxes increase over 10% over the last 2 years. Ask them how they feel about trying to stay in their home when there's just a built-in, not 2%, it's usually larger than that because they can leave this levy the same because we've seen assessed values increase so rapidly, they just capture the growth from that. So, they say we're not raising your levy, but their property taxes continue to go up. So, no, it's not unrealistic. We have a lot of government. We can do things differently. I'm convinced of that. People are doing it. Communities are doing it. We just need to be willing to think a little bit differently on how we deliver those services.
You mentioned seniors. You're proposing a freeze on property taxes for seniors, and the freeze is on homes worth $350,000 or less. How did you come to that number? Talk me through the thinking. Why not more? Why not less?
I looked at 450, trying to find something that seemed reasonable. If you look at the cost of just putting in a pretty modest home these days, they're high. It's escalated over the years, and so trying to account from that, but knowing that we'll have that discussion with the legislature. So I think the Senate bill has a different senior property tax process to go forward. So that'll be part of the conversation that we have when we're trying to find some common ground to hopefully move that over. I'm hoping we can get something done to provide some relief for our seniors that have worked hard and did everything that they needed to do. They bought this home. They hope to grow old in that home, and so we want to not tax them out of that home. We want to try to keep them there.
How soon does this property tax discussion need to get done? Because last year
Yeah.
we went to the end of session and there were some last minute attempts to find an agreement and it didn't happen.
Yeah, but that's why I think it's important that we have 3 bills that have dropped. So I've worked on it over the entire interim. We tried to look at school funding as well, because it's such a integrated piece, and property taxes, 40 to 50% of your property tax bill is schools. They are exempted from the 2% cap. They're not included, as well as debt service. So those are 2 areas that are pulled out. And hopefully, the next, that's something for future legislators to deal with, is to tackle that problem. But the fact that all 3 have a bill that's filed, that we're already meeting with legislators. I've had 1, 2, 3, 4, I think, meetings, and it's several. It's not just one-on-ones. So we're starting the conversation. They'll go home. They'll have forums. We'll get together, and again, I'm going to be just continuing the conversation, continuing to bring people together, and continuing to look for ways that we can find common ground to get something done.
Your proposal, in terms of talking about saving or local governments working differently, you've talked about having treasurer, recorder, auditor positions at the county level being appointed rather than elected. How does that save money, and do you envision some of the counties won't need those positions?
Well, no, I'm not saying that, but it gives this Board of Supervisors more flexibility to really manage the budget. And so, listen, I was a county treasurer for 19 years, and I would have loved not to have to run for office. It's the Board of Supervisors that does all the budgetary management of the county. And so, for local government, that's how they do it. Your school board, that's how they do it. They don't elect the superintendent. They don't elect the administrative assistant. You have a board, and they drive the budget and mostly the policy. So I just think it makes sense. I had it brought up to me in a lot of the roundtables that I did. They asked me to step up and kind of move forward. I wasn't going to mandate that we do away with them. I wasn't going to mandate that we regionalize. I think it needs to be a local decision. But I do believe it's an outlier, and we have 8 different elected positions that we have to figure out who we want to serve in those capacities: school board, city, county, hospital, community college. So they are the ones that are driving the budget for the county, and we need to give them the flexibility and maybe focus on who we are putting in those positions and make the other ones non-elected. Nothing personal. I was, like I said, for 19 years I stood there, but there's just no reason for them to be elected.
Yeah. I want to ask about eminent domain.
Yep.
It was one thing you didn't mention in your speech, right? And you upset some Republicans when you vetoed the legislation last year. Why not come forward with a proposal to kind of get ahead of the issue this year?
Because we are communicating with leaders in the House and the Senate and with members. The House was working on a bill. The Senate is working on a bill. Those conversations are continuing to happen. We're keeping everybody in the loop on how we're moving forward with this. And so it was really no reason for me to step in at this point. We'll continue the conversations, and we're hoping that we can find, again, some resolution that we can move forward with this.
Have you given Speaker Grassley, Leader Klimisch some kind of clear guidelines for what you would sign?
I'm not going to talk about the conversations that we have. The point that we're having conversations, I think, is the important thing, that everybody's trying to be respectful of varying positions, and again, trying to find common ground that we can move something forward. So as long as we're talking and there's bills out there, I'm not going to weigh in this early, but again, they've got to move in early, and I think that's a really good indication too, that they're going to try to find some resolution to move this forward.
Speaker Grassley and House Republicans are moving forward their bill, like you said, and it's the Speaker has called it very simple. Couldn't be simpler. It gets rid of many of the sort of unrelated issues to eminent domain that you had mentioned last year in your veto message. If that gets to your desk the way it is...
I'm not going to answer that, and you know that, because we're going to go through the process. It is day 4 of the 2026 legislative session, and so that's the whole reason that we have a legislative process. It's the whole reason they're there, is to debate and have those conversations. So I'm not going to shut them down until I haven't even seen the Senate bill, so I need to take a look at that and see what they're proposing. Look at I haven't even really read the House bill, but I think I have a fairly good idea of what it is simple, what they're trying to do. So I think as long as we're communicating and working on it, I think that's a good place to be.
Is it, so Summit has said, they said at the subcommittee for the House bill that if that bill passes, it would kill their project. Is that something that you want to make sure any legislation doesn't do?
Well, you know, there's 14 different ways that you can ask that question, but we're going to continue to have those conversations. We're going to look at the bills, and we're going to hopefully find some resolution that that works for people involved.
Sure. How are things with Majority Leader Kaufman? He was
Oh,
obviously
good.
very critical of you last year.
You know, we're all, you know, I tend to fly off the handle every once in a while too. So no, we're really good. And not fly off the handle, that's not what I meant from him, but just, you know, we're passionate about what we do. Everybody is. They came to this, you know, they ran for office, they come here because they want to get things done. They want to serve the citizens that they represent, and it's really important to them. I caught myself in the property tax bill when one of the legislators mentioned something. I'm like, no. And I thought, oh, I'm sorry. That is not how we have a conversation and move forward. But it just was my natural reaction because I've spent a lot of time looking at all these different things. So it didn't make sense to me, but they hadn't. And so it's just, Bobby and I are a lot alike. We're very similar. And I'm really excited for him in his new role. I think he'll make a great leader. He is respected by his caucus, and I look forward to working with him.
Sure. You know, we're into your last year as governor here. This week was your last chance to propose kind of a legislative agenda. Is there anything, you know, during your time that's kind of like a white whale for you? Anything that you've always wanted to get done but have never been able to do?
I've got a lot done. I feel pretty good about what I've got done. I really am. I mean, I feel really good about how I feel from my perspective, and evidently, you know, I would say the legislature, because we've worked on all of these things together, and I don't get to just wave a wand and make things happen. I have to make the case and work with my colleagues in the legislature to make them a bill, make them reality. I think property tax, I hope we can get something done with that. I really would have liked the individual income tax rate to be a little bit lower. We just had 3 tough years with ag, and that's just so tied to manufacturing in our largest sector. So it just has had an impact on our budget. But you know, hopefully we can get something done with property taxes, and I feel like we've turned the corner on education, so we'll keep working on that. I feel really good about what we've been able to do, and the scores are starting to reflect, I think, a lot of the policy that we put in place, so excited about that.
There are some parts of your agenda this year that you're proposing, making permanent some of the waivers for the SNAP program, things like that. Some other...
Well, it's not making them permanent because whoever's in the administration, they'll make that decision. But what I am asking the legislature to do is require Health and Human Services at the state level to request a waiver for a healthy SNAP and healthy summer EBT.
Yeah. And sorry, that was just sort of my example of, and no, you're great. My point being that there are some things where I'm seeing you pass or propose, like codifying executive orders, to make sure that they're here when a future governor takes office. Is that something you're thinking about, of sort of future-proofing some of your policies?
Not really. I think every governor that's starting to leave, I think you need to be really careful with executive orders, to be really honest. And if you watch what I've done, I do an executive order that sets up a committee to look at a significant change. I run it to the legislature, we make it law. So you can't do that with everything, but some of the things that I feel real strongly about, that I'm proud of what we've done, that I think has an impact, like B20, you know, I thought, you know, just preserve maybe something that I thought was important. So that's why we've done it. I think there's only 2 that I'm actually asking to be codified, so that's not very many, really.
We both know that there's always some surprise during a legislative session that we're not ready for at the beginning.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you're kind of working on that wasn't quite ready to debut that you think you'll come out with later this session?
Well, so I'm still working on workforce. We spend $400 million a year on workforce, and that, you know, and then when I talk to employers across the state, it's the number one thing that they always say to me. I still have workforce issues. I have workforce issues. And so I just think we need to look at how many different programs we have, figure out if there's a way that we could streamline it, figure out if there's a way we could get more flexibility, figure out a way if I could get the employers driving it, driving what they need, engaging them a little bit more. We're still working on the 30 million with the Secretary of Labor, so I'm hoping that we can get that done and settled so that we can have access to that, because that is a way, that's 30 million that I could use for nursing, registered apprenticeship program. It's 30 million that I could use for the teacher para registered apprenticeship program. I have school districts all across the state that want to continue to take advantage of that, and of course the trades, which is really, really important for our state, especially as I believe we're going to continue to see our economy grow. We need to have that workforce as well.
Yeah. On a different subject,
Sure.
After amending the Civil Rights Act last year to remove
Yeah.
gender identity as a protected class, is there anything else you're looking at or think the state needs to do related to transgender Iowans or gender identity?
It would have been in my priorities if it would have been, if there was something else that I was going to do, it would have been in my policy that I introduced, and it's not.
You didn't talk about this in the speech, but the policy you're proposing would create a presumption that undocumented immigrants who commit crime are not eligible for bail. Why are you proposing that, and why did you choose just for that group rather than anyone
Well,
who...
because they're here illegally to begin with, and they're a flight risk, and so it doesn't mandate that they can't get bail. If they can demonstrate that they would be entitled to that, it still gives them a rebuttable option, I think is how, I don't know the technical terms that you use for it, but they're here illegally, they are a flight risk, and so we set it up this way, but it doesn't say that they can't. They just have a little bit higher level that they need to do, that they need to achieve to be able to get that. And I don't think that's unreasonable.